The Pentagon has authorized 25,000 National Guard troops to be in D.C. for the transition of power from Trump to Biden on Wednesday, January 20th. 25,000 National Guard troops, which, in case you haven't been following along, that's actually more troops than the U.S. has in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. And that's how many we're going to have in Washington, D.C., because apparently they believe the greater threat to the United States is not some far-off Middle Eastern country, but is instead coming from Republicans. And you know what? They're not wrong. The United States is not being threatened by the so-called enemies in the Middle East. No, we're being threatened right here at home by our own homegrown terrorists in the Republican Party. 25,000 National Guard troops on top of untold numbers of regular police officers and federal agents. The grand total will top 30,000. We have seen photographs from the last few days of them having to sleep, the National Guard, literally in the halls of Congress. Why? To protect the country from Republicans. And I can't stress that enough, and I really want people to kind of take a moment and let that actually sink in. Tens of thousands of American troops in D.C. because of the Republican Party. Because this is what the Republican Party has created. It is not just Trump doing this. There are plenty of other Republican members of Congress who are doing this as well, who have sowed doubt in our electoral process. You know, the ones who went out there and said, well, maybe there were some shenanigans, maybe there were some things, maybe Pennsylvania legally can't decide how to hold their own elections, as Josh Hawley tried to argue. No, actually the Constitution does give them that authority. But every time you go out there, every time you spread one of these lies, you are eroding trust in democracy. You are feeding the insurrectionists. That is what you are doing. And every one of you is just as guilty as Donald Trump is. If you have gone out there and peddled these lies, you are guilty. You are the reason we have tens of thousands of troops on our own soil to protect us from our own citizens. Citizens of the Republican Party. Donald Trump has said for the last 4 years that the press is the enemy of the people. I disagree with that. I disagree with that strongly, always have. It turns out it's the Republican Party that is the enemy of the people. They are the ones calling for the overturning of a democratic election. A very fair democratic election. According to all the numbers, this was actually one of the best elections we've had in terms of fairness and turnout and actually it being representative and the number of people turned away versus the number of people not turned away versus the number of people turned away in the past. Yeah, things were actually much better this time, in spite of Republicans trying to make it the opposite. Those troops are in D.C. right now to make sure we have a peaceful transition of power. The situation that we are going to watch unfold later in this week, the transition from Trump to Biden, with all of these military troops surrounding it, is going to look like a third world country. Because that is what Republicans have turned us into.